Joe March, what's your latest personal gnosis? Hey, Psycho Sorcerer, you say you still practice. Well, in that case, what's your latest personal gnosis? Hey, Mr. March, you say you don't want to teach, but that doesn't stop you from sharing your personal gnosis. Will you share your latest personal gnosis? Huh? Fine, hypothetical straw man of a viewer who only really exists because I wanted to talk about this anyway. I'll tell you. So think of this video you're watching as if it has two parts. The first part right now is the short version of everything, and then after that I'm going to go into the long version of everything because I have a lot of viewers who would really like to hear about the process and what crazy shenanigans happened in my practice, and that will be after the short part. But the short part is the basic meat of the personal gnosis for people who just want to hear the idea and then go off and think about it themselves. So here is the personal gnosis for your contemplation. The only thing that is real is the moment. Every God, deity, entity, being that you interact with is an aspect of the moment. God itself, the all, whatever you want to call it, the source, is the moment. We are even nothing more than part of the moment. There's a lot of people going to be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And there's going to be a lot of people that are like, that's pretty cool. And then there's going to be a lot of people that are pissed the fuck off. And that's cool. And if you don't want to hear any more, that's the end of the short part. Short part's over. Go off and give me your comments. Bitch at me. I like it. You're going to be like, but that doesn't explain this and the other thing. And what I had a different experience. There's a reason this is called personal gnosis. And before we go into the long part, I want to talk about personal gnosis for a second. Some people are like, personal gnosis is completely useless. There's no place for personal gnosis because it's not verified. But then, when you really think about it, all philosophical ideas, all concepts, all understandings start as gnosis, and then they later branch into becoming more if they turn out to be useful or if they turn out to be factual. Now, am I saying, here's a thing that's from the gods on high, this is what you all need to believe now, and this is law? No. Am I saying, here's a scientific thing that I've proven through study? No. This is gnosis. This is a concept. This is what I have come to understand about the world through my workings with Tiamat, which we'll talk about in the long section. But does that mean that this is true? Of course not. Does that mean that this is what you should just change into believing? Of course not. What it means is, here's a concept that I picked up from the path and working, and think about it. It's interesting to think about it, because if you think about this concept, you're going to find that it affects the way you're viewing things in reality, and that is the point. So, just like with reading good philosophy, it doesn't have to necessarily be true so much as it has to be a potential truth, and you can pick it apart, or you can accept it, or you can move on, or whatever. Doesn't matter. It's personal gnosis. This is not a rule for anyone. This is just where I'm at right now. So, if you want to hear more about how I came to this and where I'm at right now, we will do that in the long portion, which starts now. Ha! I tricked you. You thought this whole video was going to be a video, but it's actually an audio. I decided to do this long portion in an audio format because I knew I was going to ramble a ton, and I also felt like this is the type of thing that you might want to listen to while you're doing the dishes or something, so, pop in some headphones, listen to it like it's just a recorded audio thing, enjoy yourself. So longtime viewers of mine are well aware of my past in the occult. Hell, the channel you're listening to this on is back to being called Psycho Sorcerer, even though it's called Psycho Sorcerer Archive now. But depending on when you're listening to this, who knows if the channel has a new name now. Maybe I'm The Ultimate Moment now. I've had a tendency to change the name of the channel on a whim. Normal sane person shit. Anyway, back when I had the old Psycho Sorcerer channel, a lot of people remember that I used to work with an entity known as Ishtar. Back then, one of my primary interests was figuring out what these entities were. Are they psychological? Are they spiritual? Are they real, quote-unquote, external beings? Are they just things within ourselves? Are they aspects of ourselves? Are they aspects of the all? I had all the questions a seeker can question. So right about now, depending on who you are, you're asking one of three questions. The normie question is, are you a psychopath? You're telling me that you spoke to an actual god. The inquisitive question is, if you wanted to know what they are, why didn't you ask them? And what did they say if you did ask them? And the enlightened question is, why did the answer to this question matter to you at all? I'll do my best to answer these questions in order. Answer 1, my channel is called Sorcerer. What do you think? Answer 2, I did ask these beings what they were. I got the same answer every time, and the answer was, we are the same as you. We are neither real nor unreal, which is not a helpful answer. However, it turns out to be a great answer with the new personal gnosis that I have. The answer to question 4 is that pickles are delicious. Wait a minute, there was not a question 4, nor is that in the correct order for the questions. See question 1, am I insane? And question 3, why did this matter so much to you? I think it had to do with fear. You see, good old Joe has changed a lot over the years, and back during that time I was still looking at things from a place of fear. I didn't recognize that at the time, but compared to Joe from now, I can see it very, very clearly. If you want a good test to see whether you're looking at things from a place of fear or a place of love, ask yourself if you're seeking power. If you're seeking power, you're looking at things from a place of fear. Sorry. Not actually sorry. If you're seeking understanding, then you're looking at things from a place of love. It's entirely possible to seek both, but if you're being honest with yourself, you'll know where you are across that polarity. Is it really a polarity? That's not the topic for today. So why did it matter to me so much? I think that there was a fear about my place in the cosmos. Yeah, we're getting into existential dread territory. Anyway, after working with Ishtar, I ended up switching the entity that I primarily worked with to Tiamat. Longtime viewers will know that that is still the name of the entity that I work with. Note that I said the name of the entity that I work with. We'll get back to that later. When I first met Tiamat, she was the most gigantic thing that I could fathom, the most powerful and frightening thing that I had ever witnessed. Hint, hint, this is going to be important for later. I didn't initially make the switch to working with Tiamat. I in fact originally saw Tiamat more as an adversary. It was in fact during my journey through Doth that I ended up meeting Tiamat and facing her. But as I finished that journey, I started to see what she really represented, which was the cosmos itself, existence, all things, the all. I started to see that she was nature in its purest form. She was life, death, and rebirth. She was the cycle of reality. She was the unfiltered, true nature of the cosmos. Terrifying and beautiful at once. So I made my peace with Tiamat, and so too did I start to make my peace with my fear. Then I had the marvelous decision to make a video that showed me evoking an entity. Being the courteous practitioner that I was, I asked all the entities that I had worked with who would be willing to be filmed being evoked by me for the sake of a YouTube video, just for shits and giggles. And only one entity accepted, and that was Tiamat. I chose the question to pose to Tiamat in that video to be, what are these beings? What's the difference between angels, demons, deities, gods, spirits, etc.? Primarily because this is a question I had asked a lot on the channel, and not so much because I was searching for that answer anymore. But nonetheless, the time of the video came, I asked the question, and I evoked Tiamat. However, the evocation did not go as planned. In fact, it turned into a possession, and people who've seen that video know how fucking crazy that video got. For those wanting to see my old videos from my old channel, they are archived on this channel. They are in the playlist section. I have said this enough times. Everybody still asks me when they find me again, hey, do you still have your old videos? They are in the playlist section if you want to seek them out. Anyway, I go to evoke Tiamat, who said that she would allow an evocation, but she's not showing up. So I start going a little bit more into it to try to push it, thinking that the camera is making me not be able to enter the trance that I normally enter in, and as a result, as I start to offer different things to allow her to come through, including entering into me, she takes me up on that offer, and that video becomes exactly what it is. I believe I start the video by saying batshit crazy alert, and there's a reason for it. Anyway, after asking Tiamat the question, she shows me all manner of things that don't make any fucking sense to me at the time, and then asks me if I want to partner with her in order to truly learn this reality, to which I drink to and make a pact in the video on camera. So there's no getting around the fact that I absolutely made a pact with this entity. Tiamat openly offers to give some of her energy to me, to which I agree on camera as well and have it flow through me, and it feels like my veins are fucking on fire. At some point, the question of if I fear death or not comes up, to which I say I do not fear death, and her response is, "You will." Of course, years later, I'll learn how afraid of death I really was all along and how much of my own past I've hidden from myself as I end up working through past traumas as part of shadow work, but that is not what we're talking about today. The video ends, Tiamat leaves my body, and I go back to life as normal, and I start trying to work with Ishtar again, but that shit ain't working out anymore. Seems like I made a pact with Tiamat, and it's not gonna work for me to work with a whole bunch of other beings at the same time. I've witnessed this happen with other people too. They'll have a primary being or deity that they work with, and then at some point there'll be a falling out, and it may even seem extraordinarily violent when that split happens, but it always happens because they're ready to start working with another being, and I feel like psychologically they need that break in order to move into this new place that their brain is ready to move into. That too will make more sense later. So I start working primarily with Tiamat for a while, and she, of course, is forcing me to look at the truth of realities, and that is still what Tiamat does. In fact, current-day Tiamat often says that not everybody who works with her stays sane. If you aren't willing to accept the truths that you find as you work with her, it will drive you mad. These truths, it will turn out, are truths about the self, as well as truths about reality, more specifically, truths about what you ignore about reality. Learning some of these truths rocked my world so hard that I tried to escape from my work with Tiamat and broke away from her for a time. In my search for new guidance, I found yet another deity-type figure, this time called the Morgan. Many of you know a lot more about that period of my history because that's when, on my old channel, I started sharing directly what was happening to me. The Morgan helped me to work on myself, to go through my shadow work, to find the parts of my soul which had fragmented and caused me to be so fearful, and to accept those fears for what they were, and to accept those hidden memories of my own as a part of me and bring them back into who I was. This, it would turn out, is a needed operation that I had to go through before I could truly work with Tiamat the correct way. You see, I was so full of delusional thinking for the purposes of shielding myself and making myself feel strong that I couldn't accept the truths that Tiamat was trying to show me until I accepted myself. My work with the Morgan showed me how to accept love as opposed to fear as the primary motivator. And after that, I ended up working with Tiamat once again, and it's then that Tiamat revealed to me that she and the Morgan had been working together the whole time. In fact, I began to get the impression that she and the Morgan were linked in some way. Not that they were necessarily one and the same being, but yet that they also were. And it started to explain a few things to me, but yet not in a way that I could clearly articulate yet. I even began to recognize that Ishtar was somehow related to the two as well, that it was as if all three of these beings were just masks or faces for some other thing that I was working with. It would take me years before I actually came to an understanding that's more similar to the Hindu view, that you could look at the all or the one God or existence or the cosmos as this ultimate being, and then the gods as different versions of that one being who can speak to you from a certain vantage point or through a certain lens or through a certain point of view. And that really worked for me as a temporary placeholder of what was going on here. Now, some of you at this point are saying, why did it take you so many years to get to that realization? And others of you are saying, wasn't there a big period of time where you dropped occultism altogether and became a complete atheist? How do you act as if you're still working with Tiamat the whole time? These two things are linked together. I won't bore you with all the details of why I ended up in the positions I ended up or how I came out of them exactly. Many people who followed this newer channel can actually learn all about that. That's also in the playlist section, in its own section, about me leaving the occult and coming back to it. You can follow hours of videos about that process. However, I believe as part of coming to understand the true me and the true all or God, or existence, or grand infinity, or reality, or whatever you want to call that thing that I had been working with all along, with different masks or different versions of gods to represent it, I had to be able to reconcile the two parts of my brain that were constantly at war. The one part that thought it was all psychological, and the one part that thought it was all spiritual, and find an equilibrium, a set of understandings that would suit both. For example, if God is all that is, this suits both. From a spiritual point of view, God is an all-encompassing something that we are a mere part of. In a sense, we are God as well. In a cosmic psychological view, the universe, the cosmos, all that is something that is in a sense external to us out there, but at the same time, we cannot exist without it. We are a part of it. And so all of my views about these gods as I came back into the occult have been able to work in both methods. There's no longer a reason to worry about which is true because both work the same way using the framework that I'm using. And I wouldn't have been able to give the psychological, scientific framework the true test that it needed if I hadn't gone 100% into it, because my upbringing was more spiritual. So that was my deep dive to find the place where the two intersect. Additionally, and possibly more importantly, Tiamat was pushing me to let go of my delusional thinking, and that's what took me years to do. You can think about those years as a prolonged grounding exercise to get in touch with oneself in the silence of the void. In any case, when I began working with Tiamat again, she appeared to me as Tiamat, Ishtar, and the Morgan interchangeably. I began referring to her as the teacher because it seemed easier when talking to other people to just call this entity I'm working with the teacher. It seemed somewhat inappropriate to pick one of these gods and say that's what it was because it had become more than that now. It also sounded insane if I simply said I was working with God or the All, though that's honestly how I saw it. After a few months of working with her, this teacher entity asked that I voluntarily merge with it, that I allow myself to be filled with it and accept us as one. I did so, in an experience I cannot describe in words, and since then I found myself having revelations about the truth of myself and reality at a far more rapid pace. I also started questioning how much of my work with the teacher was with an external entity, an incarnation of God, and how much of it was merely working with my own subconscious self. It would take me a while before I realized this was because my subconscious self was now merged with this being, or at least I, being my subconscious self, saw myself as part of this all. So my work with that part of myself became like working with this being. To keep myself from getting confused, I started referring to this part of myself as the teacher, and returned to calling the greater God being Tiamat. This thing that I now worked with was no longer the Tiamat I had worked with in the past. It was something more than that. It was as if Tiamat had shown me the blurriness of the lines between what we would consider the gods and the one true all, and now I was working with that all more directly, but because of her. For this reason, this being was fine with me using the name Tiamat when referring to it. So, when I say I work with Tiamat, it is both true and yet not quite accurate. I work with the all, which revealed itself to me through Tiamat some time ago, and I refer to it as Tiamat because granting it a friendly name and conceptual form to personify it makes it easier to work with. My work with Tiamat has helped reveal a great many things about myself and about my views of reality in comparison to the actuality of reality. Many of these musings have already been recorded on this channel, so I'll spare you from having to hear them again here. The important thing to understand here is that if I'm working with an actual God, as people would perceive it, it's helping me to understand the truth of myself and to get in touch with its self. It being the all, it being everything around me, it being reality. And if it's merely my own mind that I'm interacting with, then I'm interacting with a personification of all that which is outside of me, the reality, the all, the external that I am still a part of. And this concept that is my understanding of that all is growing and evolving as I learn more about myself and that reality. So we've just ventured on a very long walk just to get to the point where I can finally tell you the Gnosis part. Oh my Tiamat. Back in February, I had a vision of Tiamat, where she pulled out of me every character I'd ever imagined, written for, believed I summoned, believed I was, etc. This includes the various gods, deities, entities, whatever that I'd worked with in the past. And I'm only calling them characters because that's how she referred to them, like the characters of a story. It's impossible to give the exact specifics of what I was shown, but the best way to describe it is to say that Tiamat told me, "These characters have served you well, but now your progression will speed up exponentially if you can learn not to be attached to them for self-recognition." I nodded, thinking I understood, and said, "I should concentrate on being who I really am." My thoughts went to my body, how I look here and now, my life in this world, and what most people call the real world. "No," she responded. I saw her pick that image of me out of the air as if it was one more of the characters. "This is also just a character," she explained. "Your progression will speed up exponentially if you can learn not to be attached to it for self-recognition." This was profound for me. I've been contemplating this idea for months. The idea that the character that we think of ourselves as, the story of who we tell ourselves we are, is not real. And then it hit me, what I'd been told all those years ago. We are the same as you. We are neither real nor unreal. The gods, as we imagine them, are characters. Ourselves, as we imagine ourselves, is a character. Neither is real, at least not from that point of view. These characters we think of when we work with gods or deities or spirits are ways of personifying something that is non-physical. This history of who we are, this idea of what we are, is a way of personifying something non-physical, our consciousness, our being. By giving it a character, we give it meaning, we give it shape, we give it a story, and we are a species that loves stories and uses them to grow. The gods can be looked at as energies or aspects of the reality, or different ways to interface with reality, however you like. But the characters we make to represent the gods are just a story for us to grasp onto to make communication easier. Take these stories too seriously, and you end up in trouble. The same is true with the character we've built for ourselves, what we believe ourselves to be in this world. Take yourself too seriously, and invite trouble. This is because we, just like the gods, are in actuality just part of that greater all. But what is that greater all? What is God, if you will? I would suggest that God is the one thing that is real. God is the representation of reality. But what is real? If the stories and histories and characters that we all use to understand the world aren't reality, what can you call truly real? These past few months, meditating on the idea of letting go of the character of myself, have led me to the answer to this question. What's real to me is my experience in a given moment. When I help a friend move his TV to his new house, the experience, in the moment of it happening, is real. It happened and thus was real. We, in a sense, will always exist because we've already existed, and that doesn't go away just because something changes. Our memory is not what makes something real, nor is its tangibility. It happened because we experienced it, and, in fact, the only thing that is truly real may be what we are experiencing at any given moment. Thus, every being I've ever worked with is real, and also none of them are, and none of us are. My experience working with them is what is real. Our individual concepts of who and what we are, or what that makes us, has always been non-existent. So the next time someone asks me, "Do you believe the gods are real?" my answer will be, "Bitch, no one's real." The only thing real is the moment. And thus, my work with Tiamat finally brings me to the answer I asked all those years ago. What are all these entities? How are they the same as us? How are they the same as each other? What is God? What is real? The only thing real is the moment. Tiamat is the moment. God is the moment. When I originally saw Tiamat all those years ago, she was a frightful, horrifying thing, and that is also how I viewed reality. It's how I viewed my moment-to-moment life. When I see her now, she's a beautiful, bright, shining, golden being. She's love, and that's how I now view my moment. This change in me changed the way that I view the moment. It changed the way that I view God. Wow, that long section was way longer than I meant for it to be. Or way shorter. I don't know, because I haven't actually recorded it yet at the time of recording this. But you've already listened to it, if you listened to it. So you know, but I don't know from when I recorded this part. Either way, I hope you enjoyed listening to it if you listened to it. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Hope you guys are having a great time, great life. I know that I'm enjoying life a lot now that I've got my new job. And that's about it. So, hope you liked it. Until next time, safe travels.